This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so we're so fortunate to have with us today Andria McClellan, who's a member of the City of Norfolk City Council, and she has announced that she's a candidate for Lieutenant Governor. And she's been very active on a number of progressive issues and so on. She did speak briefly at the ACDC meeting last Wednesday, but we will call upon her to make a few remarks, and then we'll open it up for questions from the audience. Andrea, the floor is all yours.
Okay, great. I want to be mindful of everybody's time. You know, we candidates can talk as long as you will let us. So how about if I give you about 3 to 4 minutes of remarks, and then we can open it for Q&A. Does that work for you?
That's
okay,
fine.
Great. So that's wonderful. So I'm Andria McClellan. As was mentioned, I serve on the Norfolk City Council. I serve half of the city, so about 125,000 of our residents. I was elected in May of 2016 when I defeated a 16-year incumbent. It was quite the election at the time, and I was told to wait my turn. I had served on the Planning Commission. I had previously served as the vice chair of the State Party of Finance. I did run briefly in 2013 in a special election for Ralph Northam's open Senate seat after he was successful with his lieutenant governor run. I was actually Northam's campaign treasurer for his LG run, as a matter of fact. At any rate, we were fortunate. We won 19 of 23 precincts, and I've loved serving at the local level ever since. My family moved to Virginia when I was about 7. My dad left a few years later, and my mom, who was one of 8 children, had never worked outside of the home before my dad left, had never gone to college, and fortunately, she was able to attend a couple of classes at Tidewater Community College and became a technical illustrator and was able to support my brother and me. She also worked at Hecht's department store on the weekends and in the evenings, and so I became a latchkey kid of the 80s. And for me, school was really my refuge. I was fortunate to attend great public schools here in Virginia Beach and graduated in a class of 850 kids. That's where my political aspirations started as student council president, and voted most likely to succeed. And then went on to the University of Virginia, thanks to Pell Grants and 4 years of work study program, worked my way through UVA, and then was fortunate enough to get a great job with a Fortune 500 company in industrial sales. So I started out my career wearing a hard hat and steel-toed shoes and pink safety glasses because I sold plastics from Erie, Pennsylvania, pipe extrusion facilities, to Long Island, New York, and injection molding facilities. But right there, I really got to learn a lot about relationships and developing solutions to problems, which is very much what we do in the political world as well. About 5 years in, I had the opportunity to go to the Wharton Management Program, which I attended a 2-year program part-time while working full-time, and then got bitten by the entrepreneurial bug, and then ran 2 small startup companies, one making CD and DVD packaging, if you can remember what those are. Nobody uses them anymore. And then a .com, actually, that I started on Queen Street in Alexandria, not too far from where y'all are. It was called Civic Zone, and this was in 1999, and it was a business created for communication tools for local government, to connect citizens to services and to get more civic engagement. And that's a lot of what I'm about right now, too. Unfortunately, if you all can remember what happened in 2000, the tech bubble burst and my .com became a .bomb, and I had to lay off 22 employees. My $1 million in angel seed funding had run out, and I had to declare corporate bankruptcy. And 20 years forward, as I watch these small businesses that are all just struggling to survive right now, my heart goes out to them because I've been there and I know what that's like. And that's why I've really leaned in at the Norfolk level and regionally on doing everything we can to make sure that we have grants for our small businesses, that we have resources available to help them apply for the PPP loans, et cetera. Since that time, I chaired the Small Business Advisory Board for the Commonwealth under Governor Warner, the gubernatorial appointment, and I now continue to stay very active in the angel investment community, as well as the accelerator, and I'm a founding member of the Democratic Business Alliance of Southampton Roads. I've served on lots of boards and commissions, helping folks who are victims of domestic violence, homeless family, people who've recently been incarcerated, and very involved with public transit, serving as vice chair of our regional transit authority and co-chair of the Mayor's Climate Change Mitigation Commission, authoring our first climate action plan for our region, and very, very much focused on the issues of flooding. I don't know how many folks are aware of the issues we have in coastal flooding in Norfolk, but we are second only to New Orleans in terms of flood risk. It's a huge issue for us today. Earlier today, when I had to leave to go out to grab something at City Hall, the road that I travel to get to City Hall, it is a sunny day, was flooded. And this happens several times a month now. So I'm working with Senator Linwood Lewis for legislation to create a Commonwealth Flood Board to address flooding throughout the Commonwealth. I could go on and on, but my passion areas and the things that I've done on City Council, as also as chair of the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission, which represents the 1.7 million people of the region, are access to broadband. Broadband is a lifeline to the future. Here we are today with all of you all. I don't know if you've had to access your doctors for telehealth. Obviously, all the kids are having issues right now, telework, etc. And I'll tell you, it's not just an issue of rural areas. It continues to be such an issue of the unserved, but it's also an issue of the underserved. So in a community like Norfolk, we have 29% of our homes do not have access to high-speed internet. It's not that the technology isn't there and the fiber is not in the ground. It's not affordable. So I think as the Commonwealth, we need to address both the unserved and the underserved as we look at access to broadband, access to small capital for small businesses, and workforce development. You know, I've told you about my background and why that's so important already. Access to a clean environment, reducing our carbon footprint, and also addressing climate change adaptation with flooding. And then civic engagement is my last piece. For me, that's just such a huge component of what I think a lieutenant governor can be. I want to be the CEO of Virginia. I want to be the chief engagement officer. And how can we do a better job of leveraging the human capital that exists in all the corners of the Commonwealth for folks who want to turn their passion into action, to help the kids who are falling behind this year, to help seniors who might be isolated, to help clean up our park or help mow the grass. Because I'll tell you, our municipal budgets are cut right now. We don't have the funds to do everything that we need to do. So we need to have volunteer corps out there and activated. So I'm running on a theme of access. I think that the almost 3 decades of experience that I bring in both the public and the private sector are really set me apart, and I can hit the ground running as your next lieutenant governor. So thanks for having me.
All right, I'll start off thank you so much for coming, by the way. And I should also announce that we're so honored that we've been joined by Delegate Patrick Hope and by Margot Honer, the elected chair of the 8th District Democratic Committee. Thank you both, Patrick and Margot, for attending today. I'll start off with the first question. To me, one of the big disappointments in the COVID response packages passed by Congress to date has been the absence of really substantive, massive relief for state and local governments who have faced unprecedented challenges under COVID. What do you think of that? And if you were a lieutenant governor, what sort of things would you do with regard to lobbying the Hill to get us needed relief?
So I'm the only candidate running the lieutenant governor race with a local government background, and I can absolutely address this. I serve on the National League of Environment, Energy, and Natural Resources Federal Committee, and we have been lobbying at the federal government. As you know, the only local governments that had access to that federal funding were those with populations over 500,000. So it was only Fairfax County in the state of Virginia. So a city like Norfolk, we had to wait for the state to pass that through. We need to get direct funding to the localities. I feel very strongly about that for sure. There's a lot of other issues in terms of the funding having to be spent by the end of the calendar year. They've made some changes with the most recent act that was just recently passed, but that was a real big problem. The way the funding and what means or how we could spend the funding was a huge issue for us. It couldn't be used towards revenues that were no longer being met. So in Norfolk, we had a $40 million budget shortfall because we weren't getting taxes from our meals and beverage taxes, our lodging taxes, our event taxes, et cetera. So what I would do as lieutenant governor, let's talk about what a lieutenant governor does. Lieutenant governor presides over the Senate. He or she breaks the ties in the Senate, so very important there, and is the second in command to the governor. The lieutenant governor is also a convener, somebody who brings the best and the brightest resources together at the federal level, the nonprofit level, the private sector level, and that's what I've been doing for the last 2 decades, to be honest with you, is building those coalitions and being able to go and lobby. I'm the only candidate with a congressional endorsement from Elaine Luria. I'll be rolling out another congressional endorsement later this week from former Congressman Glenn Nye, and another congressional candidate who was in the 8th CD as well. You'll be hearing about that too. So I think folks recognize that I have the ability to bring those federal relationships to bear as Lieutenant Governor and leading the Commonwealth.
Thank you for that answer. Does anyone else have a question? Either raise your hand metaphysically or in the chat window. We don't have anybody leaving chat questions. Please let us know if you have a question. I will ask another question, which is when we have so many candidates running for an office in a primary, and it represents a wide spectrum of the party, which is good. There's a real evil in having to pick just one. Have you thought about ranked choice voting? We have it now. The legislature gave it to us in Arlington as a pilot, but what are your views on ranked choice voting in primaries for statewide offices such as the governor and lieutenant governor and attorney general?
Well, apparently I made a very smart choice as I was just driving home and listening to NPR, because there was a whole program on ranked choice voting. And I got to hear what they're doing in New York City and what they're doing in San Francisco. And I heard a lot of the pros and cons. I've always been very much in favor of it. I think it's a great opportunity. I will tell you though, based on the program that I just listened to, also I happen to serve, by the way, on the board of our local public radio and television station. And I'm missing my board meeting right now because I'm here with you all. There were some concerns that were brought up, so I would want to research it more. The professor that was on from his academic research showed that there was a disproportionate drop off of voters who were of color when ranked choice voting started. That there was almost a suppression of vote. And I had never heard that data before. I'd never heard or thought of those concerns, but it is a little intimidating for folks to think about all the different choices they have to make. And sometimes people just stay home. So if I hadn't heard that discussion, I would have said, yes, let's do it. But I will tell you that I would like to be cautious on it. I think it's a complex issue and that we really need to consider all pieces of the puzzle. And honestly, that's sort of what I do. I mean, let's try and figure out the good, the bad, and figure out what the best way forward is. That's what we would do. That's what I would do as Lieutenant Governor. Also recognizing the LG position is not one that is legislative necessarily, other than breaking the ties. But it can certainly influence future legislation and work with delegates and senators to get things passed for sure.
I appreciate that answer, and I just want you to know I've been an advocate of ranked choice voting for 50 years, and any implementation of any voting scheme requires a great deal of voter education, and I think that goes without saying. Does anyone else have a question for our guest? Craig Hines, do you have a question? Or
well, I guess just do the three that are of interest to a lot of people: right to work, death penalty, and legalizing marijuana.
I am in favor of repealing right to work, legalizing marijuana, and getting rid of the death penalty.
Thanks.
all right, anybody? Oh, we have. Oh, okay. Anyone else have a question for our honored guest?
Does anybody know how we're going to collect 10,000 petition signatures in the middle of COVID? Because I'm not sure I have an answer yet, and I'm hoping that the either the current lawsuit or the state party is able to maybe address that. I would suggest in the future of delegate, maybe something to think about, not for this session, but in the future. If you look at what Arizona does, they have the ability to collect petitions.
Yes, caller number one. Yes. Please ask your question.
Wash my hands.
Hello, caller number one. You've got, okay, I guess she doesn't have a question. And any other questions? Yes, go ahead. I can't call on them by name because their name didn't appear here. Okay, is there anyone else that has a question for our esteemed guest? Okay. Well,
If there's no other
questions, I'll give you a chance to just spend 1 or 2 minutes in summary. Could you summarize, Andrea?
Sure. So, what I would say is alluding to some of the points that I've already made already. One of the other things that I've been fortunate to be part of a group called New Deal Leaders. I was tapped right after I was elected in 150 pro-growth progressive Democrats in the country, which included Pete Buttigieg, which includes the current Lieutenant Governor of Wisconsin, Mandela Barnes. He and I co-chair our climate work group. Also includes the recorder for Maricopa County. That's how I know about issues of online petition gathering. So I have access to an incredible resource of folks nationwide, and I think bringing the best and brightest, the best practices of what's happening elsewhere to the Commonwealth is something that I also bring to the table, and I look forward to rolling up my sleeves and working with great delegates and senators alike. And I really appreciate you all taking the time to allow me to come on your go-to meeting today. And now I know this technology a little bit better. And I look forward to, I'm going to listen to the sheriff as well. I'm very excited to see what she has to say. I will, my website is andriaforvirginia.com, ANDRIAFOR Virginia.com if folks want to learn more. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you for joining us. And it's now my pleasure to introduce Arlington Sheriff Beth Arthur, and her main claim to fame was that she was my immediate predecessor as ACDC Sergeant at Arms. Somehow she got elevated to sheriff out of that post, and I took over from her as Sergeant at Arms. But she served with distinction since I think it was what, 2001?
2000.
2000, yeah. She was appointed in 2000 and then elected again several times, and we will turn it over to her for her remarks. Thank you.
Hello.
Bob, can we see everybody or just the initials?
If you turn on your camera icon, I can't force you to turn on your camera, but there's a camera icon at the bottom of your screen. If you have a line through it, it means your camera's turned off. If you click
I get
on it
that
again,
part. It doesn't seem to want to turn on. I'll try again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bob, just so
Go
you
ahead.
know, my camera is at the top left right-hand corner, not at the bottom. So just as a FYI. All right, good afternoon, everybody. I thank Bob for asking me to join you all. And some of you, or most of you, probably know what the sheriff's job is in Arlington, but just briefly, I am responsible for the operation of the Arlington County Detention Facility, the courthouse, safety and security of the courthouse, and obviously staffing all of our courts when they're operational. And we're back to semi-normal. We have not had any jury trials since March at this point, but we are prepared and ready to do that should we end up needing to have a jury trial here in Arlington, working with our judiciary, the Commonwealth Attorney, the clerks of the court, and so forth. I am responsible for service of all civil process in Arlington, as well as criminal warrants. Most of our criminal warrants are actually bench warrants where somebody failed to show up to court, but we do that in Arlington. All sheriffs don't do that if they're not primary law enforcement. And we serve protective orders in Arlington as well. And I run the ASAP program, the Arlington and Alcohol Safety Action Program, and I run the pretrial program here in Arlington. And just as an FYI, we have more people today in pretrial than we have in the jail. We have a little over 300 people in pretrial, and we have about 235 to 40 people incarcerated in our jail in Arlington. So our numbers, it started prior to January, but certainly after COVID hit in March, our numbers, the judges have been very gracious in not putting people in jail that they believe are safe in our community, and the community safe in our community. Plus, we have a new Commonwealth attorney who also, does not believe in cash bail. So she either believes that somebody should be released on their own, put in pretrial, or kept in jail. So that has also had somewhat of an impact, but COVID certainly has had a huge impact on our pretrial operations here in Arlington. Bob and I were talking a few minutes before everybody else joined, and he said, well, everybody's going to want to know about what's going on with security of the courthouse and the jail. And me too. Actually, I just literally was talking to my chief deputy, obviously with some of the information that's been coming out with the FBI, from the FBI, and after last Wednesday, everybody is concerned about the resources in our community, as well as, because of our proximity across the river, we're worried about what's going to happen in Washington over the next week. I told somebody today I'll be so happy when Wednesday of next week gets here. I was happy that 1201 was going to get here on Tuesday, but now I just want to get to next Wednesday. But we are working on a plan to ensure the safety and security of the courthouse. We obviously have plans for that type of thing, but we will ramp this up. We'll also be working with the police department on ensuring the security of Arlington. I do have a couple staff members that work with their SWAT and CDU team. They have, they go through the same application process as the police department. They do the exact same training with the police department. And a couple of those individuals were down at the Capitol last week with the police department's team. And we will continue to support them as we have been for decades in ensuring the safety of our community. For those of you that are familiar with the Arlington County Jail, we run what would be, it's considered a very progressive jail. It was the first direct supervision jail in the Commonwealth of Virginia. That means that we have staff that work in the housing units with inmates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So we are managing and running every housing unit in the jail versus, sort of the stories you hear or the old movies about inmates kind of running everything. And, you only see them about every 30 minutes. We're there with them all the time. We under normal circumstances have a wide breadth of programs that we provide in the jail, most of which are done with volunteers. Obviously, since mid-March, a lot of those programs have been put on hold. So we've been trying to figure out creative ways to continue to run and operate programs. We work with Offender Aid and Restoration here in Arlington, OAR, and they do a lot of the programs that we run in the jail, also using volunteers, but we are working with them to virtually provide some programs in the facility. We've been working for some time on a new phone contract that would include tablets, which obviously if we'd had in place before March 16th, the day that I say, when what hit the fan, it would have made our lives a lot easier, but nonetheless, we're working on it, and hopefully that contract will go out on the street, and we'll be starting to work on that pretty quickly. But tablets obviously give you a whole new, as we've all learned, with all the virtual meetings we're doing today, that they would give us so much more opportunity to inmates, whether we had COVID or not. But for instance, they have not had in-person visits since March the 16th. That were actually the 13th, that Friday, we discontinued meetings. So working with our phone vendor, I was able to get them to agree to give a free phone call a week to our inmate population. They then can collect calls, but we're giving them at least one free call a week. And we are working also using just tablets that we have in our possession through the county to do either FaceTime calls or Zoom calls, depending on what access individuals' family might have. But because we have limited resources to do that, we're not able to let them do it as frequently as we would like, but we are trying to do that, I think, once a week or once every other week, that they're able to participate in visits like that. Because of canceling as many programs as we have and a lot of limitations we have, I've also worked with our food vendor to do enhanced meals on a weekly basis for our inmate population to try to keep morale up. You know, I mean, that's a big, huge thing when you are not able to provide as many opportunities for them to do things. But on a positive note, one of the things we've been able to do is provide religious services very easily through cable television, because of all the churches and so forth that literally had to go virtual in order to meet the needs of their congregation. And in some instances, getting those, like Muslim services, are a much more difficult service for us to provide to inmates that want it, because of the limited number of imams that are out, and so that are willing to come and do it in the jail based on their needs for their religious activities. And so it's made some religious, opportunities much easier than they were in the past. And then on the other hand, people are not getting to congregate and have that one-on-one with the person providing their religious services. But we do have a chaplain that works for us full-time through Good News Mission, and he is here and as well. I'm trying to think. The other thing that we've been trying to do is try to keep staff morale up. Obviously, COVID in and of itself has made it very difficult for all of us to live our lives the way we normally do, and keeping inmates safe from COVID has been a primary concern of ours. Knock on wood, to date, we've had 4 inmates, I believe, that have been incarcerated for an extended period of time that ended up contracting COVID. And if they've been in jail for an extended period of time, then they're clearly going to get it through a staff member, whether it's one of my employees, if they work in the kitchen or have a job through one of our contractors, or, we have DHS counselors as well that work in the jail full time. So, we've been working very hard to keep COVID out. We put staff in N95 masks some time ago, and that's really, I think, been a blessing for us to be able to do that, to have had the resources to use them, to keep staff safe and to keep inmates safe. We do a lot of contract tracing. I've learned more about all of this stuff than I ever really wanted to. When I took the oath of office to start this current term in January, I did not think that I would be doing and managing some of the issues that we have been today. But I think the staff have done a fantastic job here in the sheriff's office of working to ensure the safety of the community, to ensure the safety of those remanded to our custody, and to keep themselves safe. Because once you have one person and you start doing contact tracing, that test positive for COVID, it can create staffing nightmares for all of us. I don't have the ability to tell an officer to cover, 8 more blocks or another area within his or her shift. We have X number of housing units in the jail, and each one of them needs to be staffed 24 hours a day. The other thing we've done, just really quickly, and then I'll open it up to questions, is one of the things we did immediately was to create 4 intake units, 2 for females and 2 for males. And we did that so that we could, when people came in off the street, if they were remanded to our custody, they would go into one housing unit for 14 days. And at the end of the 14th day, we would lock down that unit. No new people would go in except for staff and staffing needs. And then we would start a new unit so that at the end of that, another 14 days, which is that incubation period for potentially getting COVID, we could ensure that nobody that was coming in off the street had COVID, and then we could transition them into general housing knowing that they were safe. And so we've been doing that for both females and males since March. And because our jail population is so low, we were able to maneuver some in the facility to allow us to physically be able to do that for the safety and security of the jail and for those remanded to our custody. And the other one quick thing is working with the police and fire department. The fire department and with the county was able to get some rapid testing equipment, both the machine that you need to do it and tests. And so we have one of those now in the jail, so we can use it to test staff and inmates if we have a need. We also are available to work with the police department to assist them if they were to have somebody that needed a rapid test. We can also, or the fire department, but the fire department has them and has a part-time physician, and they have a physician's assistant that works with them that manages most of that for them. But so we've learned a lot of new tricks of the trade over the last almost year, and just like everybody else, we're adapting and just rolling with the punches and figuring it out as we need to. So having said that, I'm available to answer any questions you all might have. Bob?
Yes, thank you so much for your thoughtful remarks. I'll start off with the first question, which is, where do sheriffs fall in the overall priority for getting the COVID vaccine? And when do you foresee that your staff will be able to be vaccinated?
Well, interestingly, that you should ask that question. The governor last week released the 1B list. We were at the top of the 1B list, sheriff and law enforcement. And so our staff started getting shots on Monday, and I have mine scheduled for tomorrow afternoon. I think I might need to move it because of a lot of calls for the region about, public safety issues over the next week. So I have mine for next week, and I mean this week, and so staff are getting them now just as we speak. They have to fill out the appropriate paperwork and schedule their tests through public health. So we had been working through our association with the governor's office, with both the Secretary of Homeland Security, not Homeland Security, Public Safety, and I guess Homeland Security is part of that title now, as well as the Secretary of Public Health. And so we were able to get them to prioritize us higher up on that 1B list. And Virginia has been pretty much following the CDC guidelines. All states and all governors are not doing that. Some of them are just doing whatever they want based on priorities that they're deciding for their own state. And so Virginia, I think, is, as a general rule, been really kind of following the CDC guidelines. That's probably what happens when you have a doctor as the governor.
Yes, yes. Does anyone else have a question for Sheriff Beth Arthur? Yes, go
Bob?
ahead, Ann. Ann?
Yes, I have a couple, and I see Herschel. Oh, I don't know. Anyway, my first question, which you did touch on, is, were you involved with the crowd control last week, and what do you expect you will be called on to do up and through the inauguration?
Well, first of all, the only thing we were involved with is, as I mentioned, we have a couple staff members that are part of the police department's CDC and SWAT team, and so they were working with them downtown. So they were part of that. I actually have a meeting scheduled later this week to talk to one of those employees to just sort of find out how they're doing and so forth. They're part of our section that serves civil process and warrants, and so they that section just in and of itself works a lot with the police department in the community. And we will be working both with the police department to help them and assist them in whatever they need. The other thing we did do was we helped them out with Metro, just helping with some Metro stops sort of outside and giving an additional presence last week, and we will work with them to see what they need. But we also have to deal with the safety and security because of some of the threats that are coming out from the FBI that they may target government buildings, courthouses in particular. They seem to have a affinity for. So the good news is Arlington County is closed on Monday for Martin Luther King Day and on Wednesday for inauguration. So that provides me with a significant number of staff that are available to ensure the security of the courthouse and jail, as well as assisting the police department. And those individuals, because they're kind of Monday through Friday type of jobs, not working in the jail, first we'll make sure the jail staffed properly and we're prepared for mass arrest, because that also could happen. We had a lot of these individuals that were staying in Arlington hotels. And so we'll be working, we'll serve as backup to the police department, but we'll also be the primary responsibility of the county courthouse and the jail, which are adjacent to each other. So that is what we'll be doing.
I also understand that there were a lot of these folks in the mall food court and so forth. I don't know if you were involved with that or not.
Oh, I had not heard that at all. So, and I've spent more time with the acting chief of police in the last several days than I have in the 25 years he's worked here.
Yeah, the other thing is, and this was just what do you mean by housing units?
When you,
I'm sorry, I didn't know.
the jail is made up of, let me think about this, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 housing units. So the jail is a high-rise facility, rectangular, and we have on each floor 3 housing units that are in essence triangular, and they're 2-story, and you have 44 cells in each one of them, with the exception of the 11th floor, where you have a maximum security unit that's 2-tiered and a segregation unit that's 2-tiered with about 8 beds in it. And then we have a mental health unit that has 22 beds for males and 8 beds for females, but that unit is only 1 story. And it was built only 1 story because of concerns of people with mental health issues hanging themselves or attempting suicide and things of that nature. And so when we built this facility 30 years ago, we've been in it 26 years now, almost 27. We built it to deal with mental health issues and so forth with individuals that are incarcerated, because in the 80s, we in the public safety arena knew and could see that we were becoming the stewards of managing people with mental health issues, because mental health hospitals all across America closed down. And in the 34 years I've worked here, this region has lost hundreds of mental health beds from the community. And so, it's interesting. We've sort of come full circle now in the whole conversation that's going on about reforming public safety and law enforcement, and why are police dealing with people that have mental health issues? Well, we can go back to the 80s when the Reagan administration started pushing down, closing mental health hospitals and pushing it into the localities and the communities. And, they've become de facto mental health hospitals all across the country. And officers constantly on the street are dealing with people that have serious mental health issues. Well, so when we had somebody that was arrested, and if somebody is being, disruptive, if somebody has injured somebody, there's got to be there's got to be a way for them to be managed and dealt with. And we have a crisis intervention center here in Arlington. COVID sort of disrupted a lot of the services for a period of time that were being offered in the community. But, an 18 or 19-year-old who basically had it was like they told me about a 4 or 5-year-old, and a very overweight. There are a lot of issues that were going on there. So, we're working with DHS to try to get this person out of jail as fast as we can, but you've got to have somewhere, a mental health hospital for them to go to. And when people become violent, those hospitals don't want those people. So we were able to finally, within a fairly quick period of time, got the individual put back in the custody of their family. The judges in Arlington are fantastic. Delegate Hope, just saying. We have a great, they're willing. We had a person that was in the hospital that, one of the judges virtually worked with the magistrate. We were able to get that person released because they were refusing medication. They were really refusing treatment. And so the hospital wanted me to take them back. And I'm like, I'm not taking the person back. They need medical treatment. So anyway, so we have just a great, I think, community here in Arlington between the police department, DHS, the sheriff's office, our judiciary, working together to assist and help people. But that's a long-winded story of what a housing unit is. And one day when we are back open to the public, I would love to have any of you come for a jail tour, and we can show you the jail.
Okay. The physical location is
right. We're where the courthouse is?
Yeah.
So we're the other building right on the same block. We face each other. The courthouse and jail face each other. And we're very fortunate to have a tunnel underground and a system to move inmates from the jail to the courts without having to come outside, without having to, move them physically, like in vehicles and so forth. So we're right there. We have a little
Courthouse,
stop right on front.
Courthouse Road. Courthouse Road. Patrick Hope, do you have a question?
Yeah, I do have a comment and a question. First is I chair the Public Safety Committee, so I interact with a lot of the Sheriff's Association and the sheriff. And I got to tell you, Arlington's jail is considered to be one of the best jails and the best run jail by Sheriff Arthur in the entire state. So I just wanted to comment that. Second question is I have heard from other sheriffs that they're having an issue with the Department of Corrections not taking inmates because of COVID.
Right.
To what extent has that impacted your jail, Sheriff?
Well, we have averaged about 30, because we keep a list and do a daily report, about 35 individuals that are state responsible that they have not agreed to take. It probably has had minimal impact on us at this point. They did finally come back out and say that they were going to start taking people back from jails, but I don't know if they put that back on hold after, we saw the explosion sort of happen again with COVID cases. So far, but that's sort of the normal number that we keep for them. So at this point, we're sort of in there. I think the thing that made all of us, that took most of us all aback, was that we weren't notified in advance of it. We just heard it in a press release, which, was kind of annoying, but, there's a lot of stuff going on, and sometimes somebody thinks somebody else is letting you know something and the ball gets dropped. So, it's been kind of a, show. I mean, for everybody, all of us. I mean, it's not, I had an inmate complaining, we were probably into this 3 months or 4 months or something. And we usually do a jail inspection at 9 a.m. every Thursday. And Jailwood Clements, who was the sheriff in the 60s, started that. And each one of my predecessors continued it. And I've continued it. And if I try to do it every single Thursday, and we had to stop it because, we had a whole troop of people that could be 5 to 10 so people going around. And so as COVID kind of calmed down, I said, we're going to start doing jail inspection again. And, with a small group, but, let's just go start walking around, because I feel like I'm totally disconnected to the jail because I'm not walking around talking to inmates, talking to staff. But the goal is to minimize the exposure. And so me doing that, it puts people at risk. So anyway, I was talking to this inmate who everybody says is just nothing but a pain, a thorn in their side. He's a state inmate, and he ended up going, I think, to Fairfax or something. But funny enough, he was like whining to me about how, they just couldn't stand it. They were so stressed out, and they were this and they were that. And I looked at him and said, well, I'm sorry. I said, you think that deputy's going home and doing the same thing they were doing, before March 13th? You think I'm doing the same? We're all, basically tethered to our homes. We're not really doing the things we normally do. We're not going out to eat. We're not doing any of those things. So, their life, it changed, but it changed just the same as all the rest of ours has. So I'm excited to get my vaccine tomorrow.
Any other questions for the sheriff? You can either indicate in the chat or wave your hand or something. I'd like to ask you a question. In general, given the financial condition of the county and the fact that we've had to adjust to lower revenues, how hard pressed has the sheriff office been compared to, for example, other departments of Arlington? Have you done about average, or how are you faring in the budget cycle?
Well, that's yet to be seen. In last year budget, the county had a pretty good pay raise, bless you, had good pay raise that was supposed to go into effect for county employees, and in particular, public safety was going to get a nice pay raise that was going to put us at a pay rate above Fairfax, who you're always climbing to get over. And, as our conversation typically for public safety or all county employees, most of our county employees don't live in this county, and they're living, whether it's Fairfax, Prince William, Loudoun, West Virginia, Spotsylvania, Stafford, Fredericksburg, they're driving through multiple jurisdictions to come to us. And so if we're not paying our employees well, then we're apt to lose them for other jurisdictions. The good news is we have a very good retirement system. And with the exception of Fairfax, most other jurisdictions, at least for sheriffs, are in the state retirement system. Some of them supplement, like Alexandria supplements, but there's people are in the state retirement system. Their retirement system isn't nearly as good for public safety employees as Arlington's is, or Fairfax's for that matter. So, but we need to be competitive in pay, especially when you're hiring younger people, because they don't think about retirement. They're like, that's so far down the road for them, that's not as important. And they want mobility more than they, because they move around in their jobs. It used to be if you become a deputy sheriff or you become a police officer or firefighter, you stay forever. But I can also say that the stress that's gone on since, the George Floyd's death, and then you compound what happened last Wednesday on law enforcement. I mean, people out there, and then COVID on top of that, people are just exhausted. I am exhausted, when I think about it. I'm tired. It's like, I just want to get through next Wednesday, and my stomach is in a knot as an American citizen that some other terrible thing is going to happen, because we have these people out there that I just don't even understand. But, from the law enforcement perspective, it's been tough. So we didn't get our pay raise, which I expected immediately. I told my staff, I said, we're not going to get that pay raise. And they're all like, why would you say that? I said, where's the hotel revenue? Where's the airline revenue? Where's the money going to come from? So, and we're not going to get a pay raise this year. But so far, I mean, we've all had to turn in what we would freeze, not have to, in 08, we lost positions and then spent 2 or 3 years fighting for them back. The manager is just going to ask us to freeze positions. But the reality is, for sworn positions, in particular for the police and the sheriff's office, we go to an academy that has 2 sessions a year. It starts in January and July. My people go 4 extra weeks for deputy stuff, and then they get law enforcement. So they go 24 weeks. Then you come back and have to do 10 weeks of FTO training with them. So if we hold out and not fill positions, then you're really setting yourself back, and it's hard to ever catch up. So far we're okay. I'm a long-winded question answer. So far we're doing okay. I probably will have some civilian positions that we will not be able to fill, but I can live with that. I'm a county taxpaying resident. I get it. I've done this for 34 years. So.
Well, we do appreciate your answer, and we understand the challenges that you and all county management face. Are there other questions for Beth Arthur? Okay. Well, would you like to just summarize for 1 or 2 minutes of conclusion, Beth? And
Yep. Thanks, Bob, very much for inviting me to senior luncheon. It's a little different than the last one I was able to pop into. I'm looking forward. I was having this conversation yesterday with somebody. I said, I miss going to meetings where you can see people and have your sidebar conversations with them, like, at a Democratic committee meeting or something like this. I could probably get 5 seconds of Patrick's ear about some issue that's going to happen in the legislature, and being able to catch up with people and just talk to people in person, I miss that. So but from the sheriff's office perspective, I mean, I think we're doing pretty well. I would say to any of you out there, if you see a deputy sheriff out in the community, or a police officer or firefighter, just remember to say, we can agree to disagree on some things, and we know that we need to work on some issues, with police reform. A lot of the things that happen in the legislature, like being able to terminate somebody, having them lose their certification for law enforcement, these are things we supported. We didn't, I support. I'm lucky as the sheriff, I can get rid of somebody much easier than the chief of police can or the fire chief can. If they're not following policy. I don't just fire them because I don't like the color of their socks, but if we do an investigation, they're not doing their job, we can get rid of them. So, but we're doing okay, and I think our community is safe and well prepared. We have a great working relationships that I don't think people really understand how lucky we are in Arlington to have those great working relationships. because some of my counterparts do not, and with the county, whether it's the local government or, you know, the police or the fire, whatever. We get along great here. We work to serve our community. And I want to say thank you all for inviting me, and stay safe. Sit at home next Wednesday and watch everything on TV, virtual and live. You know, it can get any better than that. And it'll be warm inside your house.
Right. Thank you so much for those thoughts, Beth. While we have him here, if I could just call on Patrick Hope for just a minute or two to give us an update. Is the state capitol still in existence?
Sure.
How
Yeah.
are things going in
Yeah.
Richmond?
Thanks, Bob. I mean, we do start our session tomorrow at noon, and the House is convening virtually, so I'll be operating out of my home. That's with my House colleagues, but the Senate will be meeting in person at the Science Museum, just sort of how we did it in the special session. But all of our meetings, all of our subcommittees and full committees will be online for the first time in history. Every single subcommittee will be online, and so you can view it. So it's open to the public. We had historic years in the 2020 session and the special session, and I expect us to continue with that. Some of the things that we're looking at is to continue to protect families, especially during COVID, and trying to plow more money into affordable housing and to avoid evictions. We're going to focus hard on paid sick leave and also paid family leave as well. Protecting the environment, we're going to ban offshore drilling, and we're going to authorize major development of offshore wind energy production. We're going to put a big emphasis on healthcare, and so you're going to see a lot more money, of course, for COVID, for $200 million to speed up the vaccination deployment. We're going to put more money into mental health, more money into telehealth. I think that's been a lifeline for a lot of different people, particularly for mental illness and substance abuse. What you may not know is that Arlington and the rest of the state have experienced nearly a double the size of those that have overdosing during COVID. And a lot of that has to do with isolation. So telehealth is very important, and we're going to try to make some of those permanent. On the criminal justice side, we're working towards the legalization of marijuana. You're going to see a bill to do away with all mandatory minimums. We're going to do a constitutional amendment that automatically restores the rights of felons. There's also going to be a bill on automatic expungement as well. And of course, also related to COVID, but also education as well too, we're going to work hard to raise teacher pay and recognize our teachers for all that they've done. But we'll also be working to continuously to expand broadband, not just in those hard to reach areas in the rural parts of our state, but also for areas like and Andrea talked about this, about people in urban areas that just can't afford the internet service. You know, the county's done a really good job in identifying the kids who are learning virtually that they need a little help for internet service. But that's just a one time. They're using that with CARES money. We need to make this permanent. And so we need to help as many families as we can. We're also going to plow some more money into school counselors as well. And a lot of stuff that we did, we learned from the COVID experience for voting in the federal election. A lot of the things that made it easier for people to vote, like the different boxes that you could vote, the satellite boxes, and to waive the witness requirement for absentee voting, we're going to make those laws permanent. So a lot of really good things in this session. Again, we had an historic session in 2020 and special session, and we're not going to let up on the gas pedal. We're going to keep going forward.
Well, thank you for that summary, and thank you so much for all that you and other members of the House of Delegates and State Senate are doing for us in Richmond. I always knew that you and the Arlington delegation have for decades shown great political courage. I never realized that the day would come when our elected representatives also had to show physical courage, and I'm sorry our country has gotten to that point. Does anyone else have any other business they want to bring before the group? Otherwise, I'm prepared to adjourn us until the second Tuesday in February. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate all of your participation. I really appreciate Sheriff Beth Arthur and Andria McClellan coming to talk to us. Thank you again, and we'll see you next month.